Premiering in Clash of Rebellion, but fully unveiling itself in the October 2015 deck build pack Hi-Speedroiders, Speedroids carried on the spirit of 5D Synchro summoning, letting the wind whip past your helmet as you speed along the track with high-octane machines, mixed with the childlike whimsy of toys. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Today's episode comes to us courtesy of my patrons who get to vote on a subject that I cover each month, and they've chosen an archetype that's been waiting in the wings for quite some time. One of the most endearing group of characters in the whole fandom is ArcV's U-Boys, the dimensional fractals that embody each aspect of extra deck summoning. We've covered Yuto's Phantom Knights and Yuri's Predaplants, and while Yuya's gaggle of cards is way further down the horizon, oh look, the Patreon goals, what are you doing here? The third installment of this quartet is here to run laps around the competition. So sit back, cause I'm about to walk you through all these components to see how they fit together, show you what these assembled mechanisms can do, and observe how good they are with clear eyes. It's time to get on your racing helmets and blast those engines into top speed, cause it's time for Speedroids Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. So what's the deal with Speedroids? Well, it's a series of wind machine monsters that love synchro summoning, but they tend to have their own specific playstyle because of their unique typing. Machine support is a dime a dozen, sure, but wind is one of the least supported and most exclusive attributes in the game, considering the amount of locks you find yourself in that archetype everywhere you look. So you get to run through lines that no other archetype really gets to travel. Let's start things off with Speedroid Gumprize, a level 1 tuner monster with 0 attack and 800 defense. During the battle phase, if you take battle or effect damage, you can special summon this card from your hand. During either player's battle phase in which this card was special summoned by its own effect, you can immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon a synchro monster, using only wind monsters you control as material, including this card. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and if the sent card was a Speedroid monster, the synchro monster that used this card as material gains 1000 attack. Okay, we're starting off with a weird one here, and it's not going to get much better as we parse through the rest. Basically, if you take damage during the battle phase, you get to special summon this. Then you can perform a synchro summon during that battle phase using only your wind monsters as well as Gumprize. Though what you do make can be anything as long as it fits within any restriction that you might be under. My big problem here is that if you take damage and you have no other monsters to pair with Gumprize, now it's just a blocker that doesn't do anything. It's often more advantageous to trigger this during your own battle phase, running a monster into an opponent's to get the summon trigger so you can synchro summon far from the eyes of Nibiru and Effect Veiler. It has a very interesting use case to be sure, but if I have to sync with a pack of gum that gets strangely interested in my ass getting kicked, I think I'd rather avoid it. Speedroid Malicious Magnet is a level 1 tuner with 0 attack and defense that can't be used as synchro material, except for a synchro summon using its own effect. And how do you do that? Well, during your main phase, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, and immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon a wind synchro monster using only this card and that targeted monster as material. So where Gong Strong has Super Heavy Samurai Battle Ball, Yugioh has Malicious Magnet. But like with the Orb, the issue is that you're relying on your opponent to have the right level of monster, or monsters with levels at all. Though the good news is that this is getting better all the time. While Battle Ball only makes Super Heavy Samurai Synchro monsters, Malicious Magnet gets better every time a new wind synchro monster is introduced, giving you more possibilities to commit heinous crimes. Though if you're looking for any present applications, there are plenty of ways to give your opponent monsters, even ones that replace the opponent, so that's always an option. Though with a name like that, I suppose it's used to all those terrible deeds. This is the kind of tchotchke you'd expect to see on Destiny Hero Malicious's fridge, after all. You gotta keep those ban list update reminders somewhere, don't you? Speedroid Red-Eyed Dice is a level 1 tuner monster with 100 attack and defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a Speedroid monster you control, accept a copy of this card, and declare a level from 1 to 6, and it becomes that level until the end of the turn. A perfect companion to our monsters that summon other monsters, this can change things up so you can make anything from a level 2 to 7 Synchro, providing you with a lot of options. Though, sadly, since it can't change its own level, it really does have to get paired with another monster to make full use of it. It's also kinda sad to see the dev team didn't take possibly the funniest option at their disposal. Can you imagine if this had been called Red Eyes Dice? I mean, okay, it probably wouldn't actually lead to anything, but it would cause a lot of wild rumors of people trying to figure out how Red Eyes and Speedroid are connected, and I'd be the first person to figure it out. Speedroid Domino Butterfly is a level 2 Pendulum Tuner monster, so we're really getting into the keyword soup here, with 100 attack, 300 defense, and a scale of 8. As a pendulum spell, you can't pendulum summon except to summon wind monsters, an effect that cannot be negated. And you can discard a wind monster, then target one of your banished wind monsters and add it to your hand. And that's going to come in handy with its monster effect, which states that it cannot be used as synchro material except for the synchro summon of a wind dragon or machine type synchro monster. If this card, special summon from the extra deck, is used as material for a synchro summon, specifically banish it, which feels like it defeats the purpose of having a pendulum summonable tuner monster, but I guess they were still scared about letting the niche synchro deck have access to good pendulums? I don't know. I guess it's a little repeatable. It only banishes after being pendulum summoned from the extra deck specifically, but you have to jump through so many hoops to get this online that it probably isn't worth it to run, even if it didn't have a built-in off-ramp. The pendulum spell effect, though, isn't terrible. We have more than one good monster that banishes itself to get its effects, so recycling it is pretty spiffy. Though, don't expect it to make anything else more playable. We're not exactly starting a domino effect here. Speedroid Marble Machine is a level 2 pendulum monster with 200 attack, 100 defense, and a scale of 1, and as a spell card, once per turn, when your defense position monster is targeted for an attack, you can change it to face-up attack position. Also, it can be destroyed by battle this turn, even if this card leaves the field. As a monster, when this card is normal summoned, you can activate this effect. Add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except wind monsters. So we have a Stratos that wind locks you, which isn't much of a problem if we don't have too many off-attribute cards here, though despite being a pendulum monster, is not a repeatable effect because it only triggers on normal summon. Thanks, designers. The scale effect itself is kinda nifty, giving a kind of battle destruction protection, though you are going to be taking the damage if that monster itself is smaller than your opponent's attacking force. Though it does have a specific combo with a monster we'll touch on in a bit. In all honesty, Marble Machine is basically the platonic ideal of a pendulum monster. One mode that's almost universally useful, with an alternate mode to handle sticky situations. It may be a contributing factor to the deck's overall issues, what with the wind lock, but if you don't like this card, then it's you who's lost your marbles. Speedroid Carturbo is a level 3 tuner monster with 800 attack and 1200 defense, and if you control a wind monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, you can't activate monster effects for the rest of the turn except wind monsters. You can also banish this card and a Speedroid monster from your grave, so that all wind monsters you currently control gain 800 attack until the end phase of this turn. We have another example of a wind lock here, though this is for effects, not summon. But for that lock, you get a pretty nifty tuner that's easy to summon, and gives all your winds an 800 attack boost on the turn of your choice, giving you a big incentive to go wide to maximize your damage output, which is pretty impressive. I have no idea how they were able to fit that much horsepower into a single playing card. In fact, do regular Yu-Gi-Oh cards have that? Are we sitting on a bunch of combustion engines and we just haven't looked? Hey, does anyone have a screwdriver? I'm getting a little paranoid about this. Speedroid Den Daiko Duke is a level 3 tuner monster with 1000 attack and defense, and you can banish this card from your grave to special summon a Speedroid tuner monster from your hand or grave, except a copy of this card. So while it's not a tuner that summons itself, it does get other tuners into rotation so you can use them again, making this a great early rung in your synchro ladder that can get you over the top later on, giving your extra deck monsters and tuners alike the royal treatment. Speedroid Ohaji Kid is a level 3 monster with 1000 attack and 200 defense. When this card is normal summoned, you can target a tuner monster in either player's graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field. And if you do, immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon a Wind Synchro monster using that monster and this card only. So Malicious Magnet had you using your opponent's monsters, now we're scooping material out of the graveyard. Thankfully, you can use your own graveyard as part of this. You aren't entirely dependent on your opponent for the right material. And I think the best thing about this card is that it's one of the few that summons as part of an effect, getting ready for a Synchro summon, that doesn't negate the accompanying monster's effects. Now granted, this doesn't really mean much because you immediately make a Synchro out of it. There's really not enough time for any on-summon triggers to activate, and any graveyard effects would trigger either way. Weirdness aside, it's a neat little monster that can help you make more Synchros when you're low on material, but I have to ask, is anyone else getting Bandit Keith vibes from this thing? I feel like this should have been a TCG exclusive, specifically in America! Speedroid Taketomborg is a level 3 monster with 600 attack and 1200 defense that you can only special summon one copy of each turn. If you control a wind monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can tribute this card to special summon a Speedroid tuner monster from your deck. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except wind monsters when you use that effect. This is one of the most important monsters in your deck, as it pairs with any wind and turns into an appropriate tuner to match it. Heck up, summon out Red-Eye Dice, and as long as you're looking for level 7 or lower wind synchros, you're all covered. Keep an eye out for tuners we'll be covering later on that we can pivot into as well, but right now I'd like to quickly shift over to another monster that is kind of Taketomborg's most infamous partner, because the only thing this is more iconic with than synchro summoning is with Xyz summoning, and that's thanks to Speedroid Terror Top, a level 3 monster with 1200 attack and 600 defense that you can special summon from your hand if you control no monsters. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand except a copy of this card. So you special summon this, get Taketomborg, summon that monster, tribute the Borg, and now you have your pick of Synchro monsters. But since they're both level 3, these also make for premium rank 3 material. Taketomborg only windlocks you if you tribute it to summon another Speedroid tuner. Using its inherent summon isn't going to set you back by anything, so at its height, this saw play in a boatload of decks looking to make specific rank 3s. And while the world was your oyster, the two main ones that I remember are Dante, because making it off of one card without committing any other resources was huge for getting your mill gains going, and MX Saber Invoker back when it was legal in all those Zodiac shells. In those days, drawing this was basically an FTK in that context. The other cards in your hand would just determine how you screwed your opponent over. It was so good at doing this that Terror Top was limited in mid-July of 2017 and only started coming off the list this year. These two formed an engine that gave the rank 4 toolbox a run for its money with how accessible any of these monsters had become. They certainly did put a new spin on the game. Speedroid Tri-Eyed Dice is a level 3 tuner monster with 300 attack and 1500 defense, and during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can banish this card from your grave to negate the next attack this turn from a monster your opponent controls. This is basically one of those tuners that gives you extra value, instead of grabbing you free cards. It's like a Necro Gardener helping to block an attack that would otherwise be devastating to your board position. But everything about this card begs more questions than it answers. For instance, how do you get 3 eyes from this thing? Assuming there's only 2 sides on here that we can't see, this would make it a 4-sided dice. So what happened to the 4th eye? Is someone going around and taking eyes from innocent little dice? Or was it too embarrassed to be called 4-eyed dice because then we'd have to give it little nerd glasses? Speedroid Ultra Hound is a level 3 monster with 800 attack and defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can send a Speedroid card from your deck to the grave. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a Speedroid monster in your grave and shuffle it into the deck. And if you do, special summon a Speedroid Synchro monster from your extra deck with the same level but a different name, but negate its effects. So it's a foolish burial, taking advantage of your graveyard effects and or effects that pull cards out of the graveyard, and can drag on-theme synchros right out of the extra deck and plant them onto the field. Granted, the effects will be offline, but the important part is the body itself, especially if it's a synchro tuner. It does take a little bit of time to get going, thanks to that turn delay on the graveyard effect, but you'll be able to rest easy knowing on future turns you've got an extender waiting in the wings. And considering its extendable frame, that's absurdly on flavor. Speedroid Block and Roll is a level 4 monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense. Didn't expect to see Alistair stats here. And if this card is sent to the grave as Synchro material, you can special summon a Speedroid token that is a wind machine with 0 attack and defense, with a level equal to the original level of the Synchro monster that used this card as material. So if you put this together with a level 1 monster to make a level 5 Synchro, you get a level 5 token. And you can use that token for really anything, but the funny thing is, if you want to keep climbing with just these cards, you're gonna have to make a non-Speedroid Synchro. That's because the only Speedroid Synchro tuner, Cork Shooter, is too low level to make with Block and Roll, so you'll need to make some other tuner Synchro like Coral Dragon, Excel Synchron, or if you're windlocked, Battle Wasp Azusa the Ghost Bow. But if you have an abundance of other tuner monsters, you can effectively use the token to keep the Synchro around to keep using its effect while maintaining your Synchro climb. It's a pretty versatile little card when paired with a little deck building know-how, even if it doesn't really get the point. Silly Speedroids. Blocks aren't for rolling, blocks are for stacking. Speedroid Double Yo-Yo is a level 4 monster with 1400 attack and defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can target a level 3 or lower Speedroid monster in your grave and special summon it. Yeah, you just get any of the most powerful cards we've talked about thus far, from the 3rd level and lower, with one of the best being Terror Top for that free search. That can get you a Taka Tomborg for a tuner, or you can just revive Red-Eyed Dice for a more direct route. That makes this one of our best normal summons, even better than monsters like Marble Machine, because Double Yo-Yo gives you a double dip. Speedroid Fukimadoshi Piper is a level 4 tuner monster with 1000 attack and defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of other wind monsters you control, and add one of those excavated cards to your hand. Also, place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a level 3 or higher wind monster you control, and reduce its level by 2, giving you more control of your Synchro summons after you've used it. The on-summon effect is also fantastic, effectively giving you a draw 1 if you have another wind monster, and the more wins you have, the more choices you get. This is one of our stronger new additions, and the more times you can summon it, the better off you'll be. Now I just have to train myself to pronounce this card's name correctly, because I keep wanting to say Speedroid Fujoshi Piper, which, I mean, fits with the fandom, but not the card. Unless... no, never mind. Speedroid Hexasaucer is a level 4 pendulum monster with 100 attack, 1600 defense, and a scale of 6. As a spell, you can target one of your wind synchro monsters that are either banished or in your grave and return it to the extra deck, and as a monster, both players take any battle damage from attacks involving this card, but all battle damage from those battles is halved. If this card is destroyed in the Pendulum Zone, you can special summon a face-up Speedroid Pendulum monster from your extra deck. Well... recycling our Synchros is kinda cool, and having a way to get back things like Marble Machine without having to commit to scales has its upsides. But aside from that, the gimmick factor on this one is very high. Technically, this does combo with a Marble Machine in our Pendulum Zone, using its effect to turn Hexasaucer into attack position if it gets targeted for an attack, granting it Battle Destruction protection, meaning your opponent won't be able to get past this and will continually punch themselves in the face if they want to deal you any damage. But there's not really a good setup for it besides. Maybe you'll end up stealing a win because you crash this into an opponent's monster when they're on a very low life total, or heck, maybe even do that after Hexasaucer is destroyed in the Pendulum Zone, summoning it with that floating effect because it can target itself, giving you a moment you'll cherish forever and ever. But overall, I just don't think that Saucer has the sauce. Speedroid Horse Stilts is a level 4 monster with 1100 attack and defense, and when normal summoned, lets you special summon a level 4 or lower Speedroid monster from your hand. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard to send a wind monster from your deck to the grave. So this is, like, the opposite of Ultra Hound. That one foolishes on normal summon, this one does it when you banish Stilts from grave, while Stilt summon a monster out of your hand on normal summon, while Ultra Hound recycles and summons from the extra deck. This analogy is breaking down pretty quickly. The point of the matter is, I don't know if we really need this card anymore. In a deck full of monsters that special summon themselves, having another card that does that just feels redundant, especially when we have so many better normal summons we could be using. There really isn't anything that Horse Stilts can do now that other cards can't do better, though it's doing its best to find its niche. I mean, look at it, it's even on its last legs. Speedroid Menko is a level 4 monster with 100 attack and 2000 defense, and when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack while this card is in your hand, you can special summon this card in attack position, and if you do, change all face-up monsters your opponent controls to defense position. Now, this is a hand trap I have a lot of fond memories about. It buys you a battle phase by making it so none of the opponent's monsters can attack, barring any link monsters, giving you the extra time you need to stabilize. I also had a lot of fun running this in desk bots as another machine duplication target to gain access to rank 4s. But aside from that, it's not doing much. It doesn't even get to use that sweet 2k defense right off the bat. It'll be staring any opposing link monsters down with that 100 attack score. And like, I thought Car Turbo was bad, but look at Menko, this thing's gears are spinning out of control! This is the last time I put jet thrusters on children's trading cards. Speedroid Pachinko Kart is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 1000 defense, and once per turn you can discard a machine-type monster, then target a monster on the field and destroy it. Yeah, just we trade in a monster for some removal. It's basically a power-crept Shredditor, and you have to pronounce the extra D, which doesn't check for levels. Not really anything else to add here. Konami already has a lot of experience weaponizing Pachinko, so it was only a matter of time before we saw it manifest in Yu-Gi-Oh! Speedroid Razorang is a level 4 monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense that can't attack the turn it's normal summon, but once per turn you can target a face-up monster on the field to change this card to defense position, and if you do, that target loses 800 attack until the end of the turn. That's a pretty significant debuff, turning Towering Titans into manageable miscreants, and if you can special summon this, then you've got yourself a 2k body that can push in for some serious damage, or at the very least just normal summon it and let it stand there, keeping your life points safe from any tiny beasties, acting as your very own personal safety Razorang. Speedroid Passing Glider is a level 5 pendulum monster with 2200 attack, 2000 defense, and a scale of 3. As a pendulum spell, once per turn, you can send a Speedroid Tuner monster from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard to either decrease or increase, minimum 1, this card's pendulum scale by the original level of the sent monster until the end of the turn. As a monster, if there are no monsters on the field at all, you can special summon this card from your hand, which you can only do once per turn. When this card is tribute summoned, you can target a level 4 or lower Speedroid monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Also, your opponent's monsters can't target Speedroid monsters for attacks, except this one. This is such a strange configuration of effects. A tribute summon effect on a pendulum monster, that's not out of the question. In fact, you could perform a pendulum summon to get the fodder needed for that tribute summon, but that's pretty convoluted for just a monster reborn. Its spell effect does mean that it can potentially act as a high or low scale depending on your needs, and we do have some tuners that love to be in the graveyard, but the discard having to be a tuner limits your options, and honestly, all this planning and forethought isn't like the deck at all. We want speed, speed, and more speed. We want to be running in the 90s, not plodding around formulating the perfect line of play. It doesn't matter if it belongs to one of the U-Boys, it is not getting a pass. Inglider. Speedroid Rubber Band Plane is a level 5 monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense, and if a monster is special summoned to your side of the field, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except wind monsters. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a face-up monster on the field, and they lose 600 attack until the end phase. Rubber Band Plane is meant to complement our other Speedroids that love special summoning themselves, giving us a big non-tuner to help us reach our big synchros while providing a bit of a debuff to our opponent's monsters, though sadly still puts us under one of our patented wind locks. Heaven forbid we sync for something relevant. But what gets me most is, since this has a decent attack stat, this isn't just any old toy airplane. This has to be big enough to actually run stuff over, meaning that rubber band is somehow generating enough force to kill people. This isn't a joke. Stop these toys from cooking. They're a danger to society at large. Speedroid Skull Marbles is a level 7 monster with 0 attack and 3000 defense, and once per turn during the standby phase, if your opponent controls a face-up monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can special summon this card from your hand. It can't be destroyed by battle with a monster that was normal summoned or set, and your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving this card. But if you control a face-up monster that is not a Speedroid monster, destroy this card. This is a strange one, to say the least. Despite the giant defense stat, you you may be tempted to summon this in attack position to cause some damage reflection. Having Battle Destruction protection against normal summoned monsters seems absurd, but this means you can crash this into a monster without losing skull marbles, so you can do even more damage later on. This also means your opponent will have to attack it with hopefully a big special summoned monster, actually getting this off the field, but then forces more reflection damage. And on top of that, it's a big non-tuner for synchro summons. You just have to wait for very particular circumstances to align at the right time to actually make use of this without committing a weird amount of resources. But despite the weirdness, I can't fault the food quality of this card, because if it was a steak, it'd have a fantastic amount of marbling. Quick reminder, if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. There are quick and easy ways to help out the channel, and if you want to go the extra mile while getting some sweet perks, check out my Patreon, linked below. Alright, that covers all of our main deck monsters. Now it's time to pivot over to the extra deck, containing the Hi-Speedroid Synchro monsters, tuned for greater performance and power. But that's not the only ones, because we're bringing in Yugioh's Clear Wing Synchro Dragons. The two of them go together like gasoline and fire. They truly make for some explosive combos. First up is Hi-Speedroid Cork Shooter, a level 3 machine tuner monster with 500 attack and 1000 defense, requiring generic material. If synchro summoned, you can choose one of two effects. Either add a Speedroid spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, or if all the materials used for this card's synchro summon were Speedroid monsters and are all in your grave, you can special summon all of them, but you can't special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except wind monsters. This is an incredible piece of tech, either getting you an on-theme spell or trap card to help with your plays, or effectively giving you more materials to sync up with, giving you at least double your levels to work with, and a synchro tuner, which are some of the best tuners in the game. And when I say more than double the levels, I'm not just being facetious here, because when making this card, you can take a bigger Speedroid and lower it down to level 2 with red-eyed dice. And now your options, at least in the wind category, start multiplying. In fact, considering our pool of cards, using the red-eyed dice technique might be the only actual way to make this. Regardless, this is a staple part of our most effective play sequences, even if it is the equivalent of that pistol that shoots out a big boom flag. It's a gag weapon up until they jam the corks in your eye. Then we'll see who's laughing. Hi-Speedroid Puzzle is a level 4 machine monster with 1300 attack and 1600 defense, requiring generic materials. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a special summoned monster, you can make this card's attack become double its current attack until the end of the damage step. And once per turn, during the end phase, if this card is in the grave because this synchro summoned card was sent there from the field this turn, you can target a Speedroid monster in your grave, accept a copy of this card, and add it to your hand. This is another pretty good all-rounder, offensively taking on some huge monsters by itself. And if it gets destroyed or you sink it away, you get to recover a Speedroid. Doesn't seem like much of a puzzle to me though, or like, is there a puzzle on it? Or how you use it? Oh, these dual puzzles always get me tied up in knots. Hi-Speedroid Chanbara is a level 5 machine monster with 2000 attack and 1000 defense, requiring generic material. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battles, it gains a permanent 200 attack boost. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished Speedroid cards and add it to your hand. Early on, this is where a lot of your aggro would come from. With 2 attacks per turn, Chanbara would get up to 2400 attack, and the more turns it could attack, the scarier it would get. The floating effect is nice, but not widely remembered, as you could slot this into anything that made level 5 synchros, and now you could cull the field with one big fake sword. Though in a pure version of the deck, yeah, it's a welcome sight to get back your resources. It's a nifty monster to have on hand when our opponent shields are down. Thankfully, this double attack can be direct, and the fact it also has 2 tiny swords along with a gigantic one is just such a charming move. Oh Chanbara, you're never gonna use those toothpicks, you already have big sword. I dig their commitment to the aesthetic though. More swords is always cooler. Hi-Speedroid Hagoita is a level 5 machine monster with 2000 attack and 1000 defense, requiring generic material. During either player's turn, you can tribute this card to increase the level of all monsters currently on the field by 1 until the end of the turn. And if this card is in the graveyard and you control a Speedroid tuner monster, you can special summon this card, Also, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn, except for wind monsters. This is another ladder climbing monster, modulating levels and giving you repeatable non-tuner synchro material. It even gives you the chance to mess up your opponent's summons by level modulating them at quick speed. So if you see your opponent assembling what they need for a particular Xyz or synchro play, just shift their levels a little to the left and watch them mold over it. You really are playing a whole other game than your opponent at that point. And that game, by the way, is badminton. Look, it's even got those little shuttlecocks out. Hi-Speedroid Kendama is a level 6 machine monster with 2200 attack and 1600 defense, requiring generic materials. It deals piercing battle damage, and you can banish a machine monster from your grave to burn your opponent for 500 damage. Also, if this card is in your grave and you control no cards, you can special summon this card, but you can't normal summon or set that turn. Having this in rotation gives you a pretty snazzy amount of inevitability. As long as you keep the rest of your field clear, Kendama can keep coming back turn after turn, and with piercing, defensive tactics won't stop you from getting in for damage, especially since you can also throw in a little extra burn damage with that banishing effect. It's become a little less impressive as time's gone on, but when it came out, this card gave the deck a way to take over a simplified game state with ease. And sometimes, the old-fashioned synchros are the best. I mean, it's a kendama, literally ball in a cup. Japan's favorite toy since the 18th century. Why summon a double-digit level monster with protection and interaction when you can just play ball in a cup? You get your tuner and non-tuner, sing them together, have it get destroyed, bring it back to the field, and do it all over again. The ball is on a string and attached to the cups, so there's no worry if you don't OTK your opponent, and cleanup is as easy as summoning it right back from the graveyard. So why spend another day not summoning ball in a cup when you could be summoning ball in a cup? Clear Wing Synchro Dragon is a level 7 dragon monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, requiring generic material. Once per turn, when another level 5 or higher monster activates its effects on the field as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Once per turn, when a monster effect is activated that targets a level 5 or higher monster on the field and no other cards as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And if this card's effects destroy a monster, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack until the end of the turn. This had a huge presence in the game when it first came out. Monsters with big levels were a big part of the game, and this answered any of them, as well as any monster effects your opponent used to target your high-leveled monsters, including Clear Wing. Not to mention, this just gets really big whenever you resolve the destruction, so it gets even more annoying to deal with in battle, disincentivizing them from activating those effects during your own turn, lest you turn those stolen attack points into a one game. This will be the jumping off point for a variety of dragons moving forward, something we would also see among the other dimensional dragons. And we have some doozies to follow up with here. Also, devs, I'm on to you. Don't think I didn't catch that you called it Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. Nice 5Ds touch there. Hey, question, can we get Masaki Endo in for more Yu-Gi-Oh music? That would be pretty cool. Clear Wing Fast Dragon is a level 7 dragon pendulum monster with 2500 attack, 2000 defense, and a scale of 4, and requires a tuner and one or more non-tuner wind monsters as material. As a spell, you can send a face-up Speedroid tuner and a face-up non-tuner you control to the graveyard, whose total levels equal 7, to special summon this card from your pendulum zone, which is kind of the opposite of its printed summon requirements. As a monster, as a quick effect, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck, and until the end of the turn, change its attack to 0. Also negate that face-up monster's effects. And if this card in the monster zone is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can place it in your pendulum zone. While it has more restrictive summon requirements than our last monster, it also lets you be more proactive, zeroing out an opponent's extra deck monster so you can run over it on your turn, or stopping them in their tracks during their turn. And the fact that you can pseudo-synchro it back after it's in the pendulum zone means it's not easy to get rid of, which means once you have it in rotation, your opponent is going to have to deal with you fast. Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon is a level 8 dragon monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring a tuner and one or more non-tuner synchro monsters as material. Once per turn, when a monster effect is activated as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And if you do that, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack until the end of the turn. And if this card battles an opponent's level 5 or higher monster during damage calculation, this card gains attack equal to the opponent's monsters it's battling during damage calculation only. This has become sort of the de facto face of the Clear Wing line, as it comes up quite often when high-level dragon synchro monsters are concerned. It's one of the go-to summons off of Ultimaya Zolkin. It's a great follow-up after Ancient Fairy Dragon uses any level 1 tuner, Hello Revolution Synchron, and just gives you a ton of coverage. Anything that could actually threaten Crystal Wing in battle is just going to get a big honest slapped across the face. And unlike its previous form, hits monster effects from everywhere, not just the opponent's field, so this can insulate you against monsters like Nibiru or other hand traps. It's a little rough trying to summon the normal way, but as long as we have ways of cheating out dragons from our extra deck, Crystal Wing is gonna be near the top of the list for a long time to come. What can I say? People just really love those crystal dynamics. Hi-Speedroid Kite Drake is a level 8 machine monster with 3000 attack and 2800 defense, requiring a wind machine tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters as material. If Synchro summoned, you can activate one of the following effects. Either destroy all other cards on the field, or negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls. And if this card in your possession is sent to the grave by an opponent's card, you can add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. Arguably, this is the card that gives the theme its bite. You have easy access to either a clean board or a way to shut down your opponent's card effects, whichever fits your setup better. This leaves you with a huge monster that, should it get answered, gives you a Speedroid to work with as a follow-up. And that floating effect works anytime it leaves the field, not just after it was Synchro summoned. It's strange to say that the giant machine dragon that's either a board nuke or a wide-reaching Dark Ruler no more with no downside isn't the flashiest effect in our roster, but nevertheless, it is our workhorse monster that gets us through tough situations and beats up even tougher opponents. Just expect it to accumulate a lot of aggro, though not even that's too bad. It just means it's really good at kiting your opponent. Odd Eyes Wing Dragon is a level 8 Dark Dragon Pendulum monster with 3000 attack, 2500 defense, and a scale of 10, requiring a Dark Tuner and a single non-tuner Clear Wing monster as material. As a spell, once per turn, before damage calculation, if your monster battles an opponent's monster, you can make your monster gain attack equal to the opponent's monster's attack until the end of the damage step. As a monster, while in the monster zone, if it's destroyed, you can place it in the pendulum zone. It can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Also, during the battle phase, if you control this Synchro summoned card as a quick effect, you can destroy all level 5 or higher monsters your opponent controls, though sadly we can't use the negate and the monster wipe effect during the same turn. But with the negate not being a quick effect, you might find yourself using it during your turn and the punish blast on your opponent. That being said, this feels very placid for a monster that needs such specific material. Heck, it doesn't even fit well with Odd Eyes, I think. Clear Wing takes up most of our levels, so we only have room for one level 1 Dark Tuner, and the only one you can argue is a Yugioh related one is Tuning Magician, which feels like a cop-out. If you're gonna print this, you should at least give us the card that makes Odd Eyes a level 1 tuner, cowards! Where was that in the Animation Chronicles? Supreme King Dragon Clear Wing is a level 8 Dark Dragon monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, requiring a tuner and one or more non-tuner Dark Pendulum monsters as material. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. And once per turn, before damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy that monster, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. And if this card is in your grave, you can tribute 2 Supreme King Dragon monsters to special summon this card. That's a pretty impressive suite of effects, and it'll be a lot more impressive when we cover this as part of the rest of the Supreme King cards. As it stands, regular Speedroids don't really have a way to summon this, so it's basically just here for completionist's sake. Enjoy your corruption under the thumb of the evil multidimensional warlord Zark. We'll see you again in Yu-Gi Explained. Crystal Clear Wing Synchro Dragon is a level 10 dragon monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring a tuner Synchro monster and a non-tuner Clear Wing monster as material. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step as a quick effect, you can activate this effect, and until the end of this turn, this face-up card is unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's monsters. Also, this card gains attack equal to that opponent's monster's original attack. And once per turn, when a spell or trap card or effect is activated as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if the Synchro summoned card you control is sent to the grave by an opponent's card, you can add a wind monster from your deck to your hand. That is a big barge of effects, but are they worth it? Well, the first effect doesn't destroy the monster activating its effect, it just makes CC over here immune to all activated monster effects that turn. It still gains the attack, which is nice, but it doesn't actually take away an opponent's monster. The Spell and Trap negate helps complement the monster effect immunity, and it has a cool floating effect alongside it. But how do we make it? Well, with the Clear Wing non-tuner requirement, we need a Synchro tuner that's either level 2 or 3 given our current options. Cork Shooter has been a fantastic option so far, and if we used Red-Eyed Dice as the first tuner, we can make the other monster you summon back level 6, turn them into Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, then tune it and Cork Shooter to make Crystal Clear Wing. So it's not actually that difficult, it's just very specific. And while Barone is no longer legal to play, we'll need another Wind level 10 we can invest in, so by merit of there being few other options, welcome to the team, Crystal Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. I'm not quite as fond of it as our other big Synchro options, but in terms of coverage, it can't be beat. Still can't see through it though, so how crystal clear could it actually be? Hi-Speedroid Clear Wing Rider is a level 11 machine monster with 3500 attack and 2000 defense, requiring a wind tuner and a non-tuner wind synchro monster as material. Once per turn, during your main phase, you can roll a 6-sided dice and shuffle wind monsters from your grave into your deck up to the result. Then, you can destroy cards your opponent controls up to the number shuffled, and if you do, this card gains 500 attack for each card destroyed by this effect until the end of the turn. And during your opponent's main phase, as a quick effect, you can tribute this Synchro summoned card to special summon up to 2 level 7 Wind Synchro monsters with different names from each other from your extra deck. This is quite literally your high roll option, performing the equivalent of an Excel Synchro summon to get this onto the board. But not only do you get a 3500 attack monster out of it, it can get potentially bigger and blast away a bunch of cards, and recycle your wind monsters all at once. In fact, you'll want to be recycling the wind synchros used as material for its summon, because you can also trade this in to summon 2 of them during your opponent's turn, giving you some incredible access to control when you need it. At the very least, you can special summon both Clearwing Synchro and Clearwing Fast Dragon, but those aren't the only level 7 Wind Synchros out there, though there aren't many that are better. The only notable ones are Maple Maiden if you want to mess with monster attributes, Symphonic Warrior Rocks for a good pendulum scale and pendulum monster recovery, Wind Pegasus at Ignister to set up some removal and back row destruction if it survives, and Wind Witch Winterbell if you're running that archetype to supplement this one. Thankfully, we have a strong base to work off of, which is good because if we didn't have an excuse to play card games using motorcycles, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. That's all of our Synchro monsters, but we've also got a solitary Link monster to help us out. Hi-Speedroid Rubber Band Shooter is a Link 2 monster with 1000 attack, requiring 2 wind monsters as material. During your main phase, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a wind monster. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Synchro monsters. You can banish a wind Synchro monster from your extra deck to reveal 2 Speedroid monsters with different names from your deck, whose total levels equal the level of that Synchro monster. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to your hand, and you send the other one to the graveyard. This is a ludicrous card to add to the theme, so what in the world were they thinking? The extra wind normal summon is really good, especially since most of our effects only trigger on normal summon. The random add effect may seem too inconsistent to be useful, but you can actually rig things in your favor. Basically, banish a level 7 and choose both Terror Top and Double Yo-Yo. If they give you Double Yo-Yo, you can use the extra normal summon to deploy it, using its effect to summon out Terror Top, get the search, and combo from there. If they give you Terror Top, you can still use the extra normal summon to get it out, search a Take Tomborg, get a matching tuner, and then keep going from there. Just be ready to deploy some 6 synchros after you do this, because you won't have access to any other extra deck type. But these kinds of reunion tours always do big numbers, so you should be good. After all, everyone loves it when the rubber band gets back together. That does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. High Speed Re-Level is a normal spell card that banishes a Speedroid monster from your grave, then you target a Synchro monster you control. Until the end of the turn, change its level to the banished monster's level, and it gains attack equal to that monster's level times 500. So if you banish, say, a Menko, the Synchro monster becomes level 4 and gains 2000 attack. Banish Skull Marbles, and you're looking at a monster that's now level 7 and gains 3500 attack. Pretty savage boost, but to be honest, our power was never really in question, so this takes up a slot that could otherwise help enable your field rather than make your already impressive bosses stronger. There's an argument for the level modulation helping to enable certain kinds of summons, but I'd like my level modulation to actually have something that affects the board state too.
And if you just so happen to be the kind of person being shown on the art, trying to make Hi-Speedroid Kite Drake with a Ghost Trick Neko Musume and Rock Ogre Grotto #1, I can tell your priorities aren't victory. It is, however, a very funny deck brew. High marks for that. Shock Surprise is a normal spell card that has you banishing up to 2 Speedroid monsters from your grave, then targeting that many cards on the field and destroying them. Hey, wait, this card is actually based. What in the world? It's a 2-for-1 as long as you've set up your graveyard. The only downside is that it targets, but really the only reason this probably doesn't see play is that generic options are more suited for handling these modern gameplay scenarios. But honestly, I'm surprised this random card is so good. Speedroid Scratch is a normal spell card that sends a Speedroid card from your hand to the grave to add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand. Bit disappointed you need to pitch an on-themed card, but to be honest, if you could send anything, that would make the Terror Top Splash even stronger, so we're only using it in this theme. With a deck full of highly specialized monsters needed for different stages of our Synchro climbing, it's good that we have a way to filter into the right ones, even if it is at a -1. Though it certainly helps that a number of them have graveyard effects we can use after they've been pitched. It's no sign at mining, but I still find that it scratches the same itch. Speed Recovery is a normal spell card that targets a Speedroid monster in your grave and special summons it. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from the grave, then target a Speedroid monster in your grave and add it to your hand. So it's a Monster Reborn going out, and a Monster Reincarnation on the following turn. How neat is that? I also like how none of it has a once per turn clause, so we can just play out a whole bunch of these in one turn to bring our grave back to life. Then on the following turn, you can just put those monsters back into your hand. This positions Speedroids not just as the acceleration-addled toys we've known them as, but as pretty good medics too, setting our monsters up for a speedy recovery. Speed Lift is a quick play spell card that you can activate if you control exactly one tuner and no other monsters. Special summon a level 4 or lower Speedroid monster from your deck, and neither player can activate cards or effects when that monster is special summoned. Now, it sounds cool to have a card that has a Spell Speed 4 type condition on it, but there is a big catch to it. It doesn't apply to Speed Lift itself, it applies to the summon of the monster from it. And because it says neither player can activate cards or effects, this also means any on-summon effects of cards like Terror Top won't actually trigger, even though their effects aren't being negated. This can still be useful if you positively need to get that monster onto the board, but there is a way around this. If you activate Speed Lift at chain link 2 or higher, then the last thing to happen when the chain resolves is not the summon of the monster. So when a new chain is formed, you'll be able to use your effects as normal. Just be aware that your opponent will have the same opportunity. It's a weirdly complex card for what amounts to Pachinko Cart getting a crossover spot in Gold Pride, but hey, stranger things have happened. Speedroid Wheel is a quick play spell card that has you discarding a card and rolling a 6-sided dice. Then special summon from your hand and or deck 1 or 2 Speedroid monsters whose total levels equal the result, but negate their effects. If you don't special summon, you lose life points equal to the result times 500. So what I like about this is that it actually reminds me of Aliens. If you haven't watched my video about them, Crop Circles was the first, and I thought only, card to punish you for failing to find. A concept where you go through your deck to fulfill an effect, but find that you have no targets for it. Games like Magic the Gathering will let you do this all the time, certain conditions notwithstanding, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Won't even let you attempt to do this if you don't have a valid target. You can't activate Reinforcement of the Army when there are no level 4 or lower warrior monsters in your deck. But now, Speedroid Wheel can be added to that short list, though is a bit more understandable in this case. With Crop Circles, you can control the levels that you spend to find whatever monster you're looking for, but Wheel has an element of chance. If your die roll is one where you can't come up with the levels to match it, you get punished for it, which means you'll want to keep in mind what monsters you have access to at any given time so you don't fall prey to a bad result. Though, hilariously, the higher the number you get, which increases the penalty that you would get, the easier time you'll have of fulfilling it. And even if the levels of the summoned monsters don't line up for a Synchro summon, Rubber Band Shooter is once again here to save the day as an excellent option. I also commend the artist for creating such a cool roulette wheel out of the raceway aesthetics we've seen so far. But can we get someone other than Pachinko Card on these? We have so many monsters, we can't have one hogging all the spotlight like this. Dice Roll Battle is a normal trap card that you can activate when your opponent's monster declares an attack. target a Speedroid monster in your grave and banish both it and a Speedroid tuner in your hand. And if you do, special summon from your extra deck a Synchro monster whose level equals the total original level of those two monsters. During your opponent's battle phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a face-up attack position Synchro monster on each side of the field, and make that face-up attack position monster your opponent controls attack that monster that you control, and perform damage calculation. That's right, if you're waiting for me to drop an effect that involves dice rolling on the card that has 2 dice on it, named Dice Roll Battle, prepare to be disappointed because this has nothing to do with any of that. Maybe you use one of your dice-themed monsters as the tuner, but that's about the extent of it. There's a forced attack mechanic going on here, but it only works if both you and your opponent have a Synchro on board, so I'm really just going to ignore that. We basically have a quick sync trap card like King Synchro, though we use material that's exclusively not on the field, which I do kinda like. Granted, you have to keep a Speedroid tuner in hand to make this work, and your grave does need to have the appropriate monster to work with it, but the good news is that this can actually summon any Synchro monster that matches the levels you banish, as long as it doesn't have any kind of summon restriction. Just don't think you can pull a 10 pie and summon out Black Rose Dragon to blow up your opponent's board, because this special summons from the extra deck, it doesn't Synchro summon from it, which means no effects that require you to have done that will trigger after resolving Dice Roll Battle, which proves once and for all that Mahjong is just better than dice games. Re-Dicecle is a normal trap card that targets a Speedroid tuner monster in your grave and special summons it, but its effects are negated. Also, roll a 6-sided die, and its level becomes that result until the end of the turn. You can also banish this card from your grave to, immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon a Wind Synchro monster, using monsters you control as material, including a Speedroid tuner monster. Being a trap card is usually a downside, which sucks when placed on a card with an effect I really like. The random level modulation does mean it's not going to always line up with your available material, but will always make for good link material, especially for, once again, Rubber Band Shooter. The quick sync is also nice. While not as open as Dice Roll Battle, we can still make cards like Hi-Speedroid Kite Drake to utilize its back-breaking on-summon effect, which we can actually utilize because this actually performs a Synchro summon. If Transaction Rollback becomes a staple card in the build, you better believe this card is getting a chance to shine, even if it would get rid of the quick sync effect. It's also a big morale booster for me specifically. Sometimes I worry that my jokes and puns on these videos are a bit forced. Then, I see that Re-Dicecle got past the draft stages, and I start to feel a little better. Speedroid Duplicate is a normal trap card that has you banishing a wind monster from your graveyard, then targeting a card your opponent controls and returning it to the hand. During your main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target a level 2 or higher Speedroid monster you control and reduce its level by 1, and if you do, special summon this card as a level 1 Wind Machine tuner monster with 0 attack and defense. It's not treated as a trap card, but it is an effect that can only be used once per duel. This is a pretty fantastic little card. If you don't have an immediate use for the grave effect, you can set this as an on-theme compulsory evacuation device, but if you can get this into the grave, you can essentially take any Speedroid and make it a Synchro of its same level, because the token is a tuner. It used to be a way to access Crystron Halqifibrax, but I don't think that's ever going to come off the ban list, so you don't really have to worry about it. It can also just be a spare tuner to work with another monster you have on board, or just make Rubber Band Shooter with it. It's all pretty valid. Really, I'm just sad this has a once per duel clause on it. Having a repeatable tuner would be rad as hell, though they'd probably have to add a lot more restrictions on it to keep it from accessing the most random utility monsters out there to cover every possible contingency. Not to mention that Puzzle looks so happy to have some friends around here. Don't you want Puzzle to have more friends? We need a friendship-based errata on this card, stat. Alright, with all the Speedroid cards taken care of, let's talk about a little one-card combo. I'm gonna show you how you can end on either Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon or Hi-Speedroid Clearwing Rider off of only a single card, Speedroid Terror Top, which you can hard draw or search off of scratch. Lead by special summoning the Terror Top, searching out Taka Tomborg, special summoning it, and tributing it to summon out red-eyed dice. Change top to level 2, then sync for Cork Shooter, using its effect to summon back the material used for its summon. With red-eyed dice's new trigger, change Terror Top to level 6, sync them together to make Clearwing Synchro Dragon, then tune it and the Cork Shooter into Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon, giving you that monster effect immunity and spell and trap negate. But if you want to go even further beyond, instead of making Clearwing Synchro Dragon, link Terror Top and Dice for Rubber Band Shooter. From here, banish a level 7 Wind Synchro monster from your extra deck and present Speedroid Marble Machine and Passing Glider. From here, the combo will go either one of two ways. If you're given Marble Machine, use Rubber Band Shooter's extra normal summon to bring it out, searching out Double Yo-Yo. Use your regular normal summon to get it onto the field, using its effect to summon red-eyed dice. Change Double Yo-Yo to level 5, then sync the dice and marbles into Martial Metal Marcher, using its effect to summon back red-eyed dice. We don't need to level modulate from here, because now you're going to sync the level 5 Double Yo-Yo and the level 3 Cork Shooter to make whatever level 8 Wind Synchro monster fits your fancy. Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon has the most utility, but there's currently no target for it to revive, so we'll just sync it and the Martial Metal Marcher into Hi-Speedroid Clearwing Rider. From here, you have 4 winds engraved to use with its effect in case you have to destroy some cards, and during your opponent's turn, you can trade Wing Rider out for your 2 Clearwing monsters. Alternatively, if you are given Passing Glider, you can use the extra normal summon from Rubber Band Shooter, tributing it for the Passing Glider's tribute summon, summoning out any of your Speedroids that are not red-eyed dice from your graveyard. Sync the Passing Glider and Cork Shooter for Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, using its effect to get out red-eyed dice, using its effect to modulate your other spare Speedroid into level 2. Make Martial Metal Marcher, bring back the red-eyed dice, then sync it and Excel into Clearwing Rider, ending on the same end board minus Rubber Band Shooter, but with an additional Wind Engrave. And with at least 4 other cards in hand, there's a lot more mileage you can get out of these cards. Alright, so that's all of the Speedroid cards, but what do we do with them? Well, the main deck doesn't have any win conditions, it all comes down to our extra deck monsters, so our goal is to summon as many of them as possible as quickly as possible. Our angle will be looking for all of the cool wind options other decks don't normally have, and converting them into strong anti-monster effect boards and big attack points. So what can we play to help them out? In keeping with the anime, Yu-Gi-Oh's partner in crime Rin has a wind archetype that follows a lot of our same conventions. Wind Witches. It basically swaps out the machine typing for spellcasters, as they're loaded with lots of easy to summon monsters that wind lock you, aiming to make big synchros while doing big burn damage. The major hurdle to full integration of the two themes is Ice Bell, because if you use its effect, you'll be locked out of summoning anything from your extra deck that isn't a level 5 or higher wind monster, which wouldn't be an issue if not for Cork Shooter. The upside to running Wind Witches is that some of them give effects to wind synchros they're used to make. Snowbell is a level 1 tuner that you can free summon from your hand once you have 2 or more winds in play, and gives the monster it makes effect destruction protection from your opponent. And Freezebell is a level 3 non-tuner that gives battle destruction protection. As far as synchros we can borrow, Winterbell can do some extra damage if we've got some Wind Witches in the graveyard, and during the battle phase you get to summon a level 7 or lower monster for free from your hand, though it won't be able to attack. It's the world's strangest ancient fairy dragon. Diamond Bell is also a pretty cool follow-up because it's removal if you deal damage, whether it be by battle or effect. As for generic synchros, we've actually got a lot of wins to choose from. Stardust Charge Warrior gets you a draw as you go up the synchro ladder. Old Entity Haster if you want to be a little silly with taking your opponent's monsters. Wind Pegasus at Ignister gives you some back row interaction with some retaliatory removal after it's been used. Virtual World Beast Juju gives you removal and a monster that's hard to remove, while Virtual World QB Shen Shen is a macrocosmos for on-field cards, which can shut down a lot of different strategies. It's also not out of the question to make good use of Battle Wasps. If you make it with at least one Synchro monster, you get a double attacking 2800 attack monster that has the chance to debuff your opponent's entire board by 1000 attack and defense.
Hey guys, Pillock here. Now, I will be the first to admit that Speedroids aren't really my area of expertise, but Nova's just committed a gigantic sin by overlooking a particular generic wind synchro, and I'm not about to let him get away with that. And what is that monster? Stellar Wind Wolfraye. It gains 300 attack each time a monster effect activates from either player, capping itself at 4000, so you'll need 5 monster effects to activate in order to max it out. And once it has 4000 or more attack, it can return itself to the extra deck as a quick effect to shuffle all of your opponent's monsters into the deck. It's like a much more telegraphed one-sided Nibiru. Unlike Nibiru though, Wolfer AA counts your own effect too, so there's every possibility that you'll be able to get it ready before your opponent's turn even starts, so they're going to have to tread extremely carefully. Or during your own turn, if your opponent's got a particularly stubborn board that you'd rather not have to deal with, you can even use Car Turbo's Grave effect to push it to 4000 attack or higher early, so have fun with that.
Tempest, Dragon Ruler of Storms, is a tempting inclusion. You'll just need some Wind Dragons to use its personal effect. And as it turns out, there is a big Wind Dragon archetype that has a huge following, and it loves Synchro summoning, Dragoonity. Grabbing Remus gets you Dragon Ravine, which gives you access to a lot of that theme, and I will leave any further Speedroid Dragoonity combo lines to the professionals. I'm a beginner's guide, not an operating manual. Speaking of easy to summon wind monsters, Kashtira Speedroids has been getting a lot of traction recently thanks to Kashtira Unicorn. Not only does it give you a way to punish your opponent's monster effects by shredding their extra deck, it also gets you Kashtira Birth, which not only lets you normal summon any Skull Marbles, or the admittedly still good Kashtira Fenrir, it also punishes your opponent's spell usage by carving out their graveyard. And, as a level 7 monster, Kashtiras make for great non-tuner material. On top of the fact that Birth can reborn our Kashtiras to be used again. For wind support, Summon Storm is a cool way to get wind monsters out of your hand over the course of 2 turns. Quill Pen of Guldos can recycle your winds in grave while providing some very good removal. Ghost Fairy Elphobia is a very interesting floodgate, revealing a wind monster in your hand to keep your opponent's monsters with a higher level than it from activating their effects until the end of their main phase 1. And Lightning Chidori can use any leftover level 4 winds to start putting your opponent's cards back into their deck. As for a silly tech pick, back row can be a pain to deal with. So, let's not. Turn every wind monster that's in your hand into a pseudo Harpy's Feather Duster with Ninja Lady Yai. If we have a spare normal summon from Rubber Band Shooter, we can get it out of our hand in addition to a regular normal summon, and then sync it off as usual for our Synchro lines. And that's all I have to say about Speedroids. This is a very spiffy Synchro deck, probably one of the few Synchro decks I'd actually be excited to play. It may have something to do with the funny dice rolling, it may have something to do with the whimsical aesthetic, it may even have something to do with the off-the-charts synchros you can play. Or that I just associate Tarot Top with Burning Abyss, and Speedroids are benefiting from nostalgia by association. No matter what, if your deck needs synchro monsters, or just has a hankering for powerful rank 3s, then that means you have the need. The need for Speedroids. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Speedroids on track for a photo finish, or have they sadly run out of gas? And which one's your favorite? I know I put a lot of praise on Terror Top, but there's something about Kendama. I just love how geometric it is. It's really cool. Let me know what your favorite one is down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out.
Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the lovely people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout.
Today's episode is also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Simic Toadstool and Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigators 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Owexitowa Hime, Anansi Dragon, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Emony Chan, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Mega Combi, Millennia Asta, Mern, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, RL Man, Sammy Haim, Scott 48, Serenity Towns, Skybuster Leo, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Baden Von Titty Sprinkles, Beelsifer, Burnag, Blitzwolf, Borger with a Shotgun, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper R.I.P., Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lobomaru 02, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, McSpoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Michael Sharp, Nitromo, Nyx, Obsidian, Ryan Simon, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, Terror Top to 3, The Legendary Raven, The Pokemon 52, Tiger X2476, Visor KG, Zaldreka and Zalus, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, and be a part of these credits, along with other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description, or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to continue your adventures in Arc V, click on this link to check out Rin's deck, The Wind Witches. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. This is... bit my tongue. If you're gonna print something like this, you should at least give us the card that makes Odd Eyes a level 1 tuner, cowards. Where was that in the Animation Chronicles? That was a really good line read, and I knocked a bottle over really quickly. During your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a big ol' burp.